Welcome to a podcast for new adventure seekers. Destination Downriver.
Hello and welcome to the April edition of the Destination Downriver podcast. I'm your host, Ron Henricks, and today's podcast, as always, is presented by our good friends at Market Insights, and also our amazing sponsor, as it was last month, and we're so grateful to them, is Allegra Print and Marketing in Wyandotte. Our great friend Greg Kowalski continues to support this impactful and resourceful podcast every month. So Greg, I want to say on behalf of the Destination Downriver team, thank you so much for your ongoing support. And again, that's Allegra Print Marketing in Wyandotte, Downriver's full service marketing and print communications company. And Allegra helps companies solve simple or complex problems through expertise, creative solutions, and a can-do attitude. That sounds like a great business. You can find out more today at their website, www.allegramarketingprint.com. And of course, you can search the Wyandotte location, or I have to mention, you can go to the Southern Wayne County Regional Chamber's website and find their online directory listing and get a lot of information about Greg and his team and all the services that they can provide to you. And that is swcrc.com. You can find our online directory there. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and dive into today's podcast. And today we're focusing on Michigan's sport fishing mecca. So there's a ton happening when it comes to sports fishing here in the Downriver region. And as you know, every month we like to come to you and talk to you about all the great things that are happening throughout the entire Destination Downriver region. And as we're really starting to see the starting of the sport fishing season in our region, and of course the major walleye tournament taking place here in the Detroit River, we thought, what a great opportunity to bring in some outstanding professionals in a panel to talk about Downriver's sports fishing. So we're excited about that today, and I'm going to introduce our panel here in one moment. But residents of the Downriver area are fortunate that right here in their backyard run three of our state's great tributaries, the Detroit, Rouge, and Huron rivers. By some reports, these are regarded as among the best fishing spots the Great Lakes state has to offer. In fact, the Detroit River is one of the most diverse and productive fisheries in the country. With the Detroit River's great structure, you can have success fishing for walleye, bass, to perch, and even sturgeon. In fact, I understand the Detroit River is home to over 65 species of fish. That's remarkable. Since we celebrated Earth Day recently, and earlier in the year saw a record-setting sturgeon caught in the Detroit River, which, by the way, made international news, the fishing resurgence and continued health of our waterways feels like a fitting subject, as I mentioned just a couple of moments ago. Our guest panel for today's fishing discussion are all category experts when it comes to the Detroit River and the resurgence of game fish species like walleye. Currently in the moment, that's the hot topic, of course, walleye fishing in the Detroit River, that annually attract in-the-know sport fishing enthusiasts from all over the Midwest. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce today's panel, which, again, I'm very excited to have with us today, beginning with Mr. Bob Burns on my far left, your far right, who is known as the Detroit River Keeper. And he's a Groesville resident employed by the nonprofit group Friends of the Detroit River. So welcome, Bob.
Thank you.
It's great to have you. Next, we have Sarah Thomas. And right in the middle, our middle panelist. And Sarah Thomas is the Lake Erie Unit Manager of the Fisheries Division with the Department of Natural Resources, correct?
Yep.
And Sarah is a graduate, holds a graduate degree from the University of Michigan in aquatic ecology with a background in fisheries, aquatics, and was a fisheries research biologist. So it's great to have you with us today, Sarah. Thanks for joining us. And then last but certainly not least, directly to my left, and is Mackenzie. And Mackenzie, help me with your last name. What, Wallachek?
Wallachek, yep.
Wallachek. Very good. I was close.
You were very close.
Mackenzie Wallachek, who is the Stewardship Director with the Friends of the Detroit River. So it's great to have you, Mackenzie. And you with the University of Michigan, you hold a degree in ecology and evolutionary biology, which sounds very important and very fancy, and extensive field background in restoring native landscapes and managing invasive species. So all three of you are quite the experts, and I know that we're going to have just a great podcast today with a lot of great information to talk about. And I have some wonderful questions that have been prepared for today's podcast, but I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of other things that are going to come up during our discussion. So I'm excited to dive right into this, and that's what we're going to do. So let's go ahead and do it. So our first question for the panel, and again, we have such a great panel that I'm going to try to call on specific people, but I know that you know your areas of expertise the best. So go ahead and just dive right in, all three of you, when it's appropriate. So the first question I have for you is, what's been done to help restore fisheries in the region, and what improvements are planned? So, you know what, I think if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and start with you, Sarah, with that question, because I've been told that both you and Bob are kind of the fishery experts, and so I'm going to go ahead and throw it over to you.
Thank you. So one of the major things that started way back in the early 1900s was oil pollution was a really, really big problem in the Detroit River. And there was an episode, I think in the 1930s or 1940s, where thousands of waterfowl died in the Detroit River, and that really activated the public and got them protesting in Lansing, and the state created some new water control pollution boards and started creating legislation to reduce the amount of oil. If you read the statistics, the number of barrels of oil that were put into the Detroit River were just absolutely astounding. And so that's the really first big thing that really helped lead to the cleanup of the Detroit River. And then there was a national push to designate areas of concern, AOCs, and the Detroit River is one of those. And so through that program, the Detroit River and other area water bodies have been able to get a lot of federal funding. And that has gone into some really great partnerships with different organizations. Canada has been instrumental as well. So obviously, you know, we're a binational water body. So both nations have really worked hard to clean up the Detroit River. And one of the partner organizations that we have worked with to work on a lot of these habitat and cleanup projects is Friends of the Detroit River. And so I'll turn it over to Bob, who can talk about a few of their specifics that they have worked on.
Thank you, Sarah. Yes, the Friends of the Detroit River has been working with on the area concerns since 2005. We were asked by EPA and the state to take over running that. And as fiduciaries, we've been working on a number of projects with the funding that came in from the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative that provided money to do these projects. And we designated around 16 projects that we were going to do in the area. And the goal here was to create fish and wildlife habitat and help increase the populations. And we've done a number of projects. We've done a large project on Belle Isle. We've opened up the Blue Heron Lagoon and Lake Okanoka to the Detroit River, allowing fresh water to come in that area. It makes for a great nursery area for the spawning fish just upstream of that. And we've done other projects. The couple that we're working on now, we've completed one down on Stony Island. Stony Island is a piece of property owned by the state, managed by the Point Moulet game area. And that project was to protect the wetlands there. We put in some shoals to rebuild and protect that area. And that's creating great habitat both for fish and other aquatic species. We've done a similar project down on Celeron, which is in the very lower end of the Detroit River, another piece of property that's owned by the state. And we're currently working on another project on Sugar Island, which is owned by Fish and Wildlife Service. And that project is to create some more shoals to the south end of the island to help reduce erosion and create fish habitat and fishing opportunities. So along with these and some installations of some reefs in various parts of the river, these projects have helped recreate some of the lost habitat that Sarah was mentioning that was impacted by pollution and other industrial and urban sprawl issues and loss of shoreline habitat. So really since early 1900s, when the pollution issues were really bad, things have improved considerably, and these habitat projects we're implementing are helping make a lot more fish habitat and a lot more opportunities for people to use and go out on the water and fish and recreate.
Yeah, that's great, Bob. And Sarah, great information. And I don't know if you noticed, but we've been showing different photos as you were speaking of different species of fish. And one of them obviously knew that you were the river keeper because it seemed very passionate about you. It had its mouth wide open right over your head. So, but it's, there it is right there. So, by the way, what kind of fish is that?
That's a walleye.
That's a walleye.
Yep.
Oh, beautiful. We have a walleye. And with an island called Sugar Island, no wonder there's so many different species of fish. I mean, who wouldn't want to live in an area where there's a ton of sugar at Sugar Island? So, not just a joke. Anyways, so the next question I have for you, and again, we're going to focus a little bit on walleye now, since we have a picture of a walleye on the screen here. But each spring, as many as 10 million walleye leave their deeper areas of Lake Erie and travel up the Detroit River to create something of a fishing frenzy. Back in 1978, the walleye population of Lake Erie was considered in a crisis. How's the walleye population for this 2022 season? And Bob, I'd like to throw that over to you if you don't mind.
I think I'm going to pass that one to Sarah because she's a fisheries expert, and I think she can give us specific numbers on where the populations are right now.
Sounds great.
So Lake Erie is very unique of the Great Lakes, and that is bi-nationally managed, and all of the surrounding states and provinces have a role in the management, and we are the only lake that has a quota system set up for walleye and yellow perch. So it's one of the most intensely monitored and studied populations of fish, I would go out on a limb and say, in the world,
wow.
Definitely in the United States. Yeah. Outside of some of the cod stocks or things like that. So we have a great wealth of information. We do angler surveys, so you will see my Creel clerks out there at Lake Erie and the Detroit River this year interviewing anglers about their catches and how much time they're spending out in the water. And then each state has research stations that are out there doing scientific surveys, and then we get the commercial catch data from Ontario as well. So all of that information is compiled and goes into some predictive models, and we track that through time. So the estimate for 2022, so this year, is that there will be almost 76 million age 2 or older walleye in Lake Erie. So if we take a look at those tagging studies that show about 10 to 15% of walleye move up through the Detroit River during the spawn, that projected run for the Detroit River could be anywhere from 7.5 to 11 million walleye this year. We've had really, really strong reproductive year classes in a row. So 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021 were all almost off the charts as far as the number of walleye that survived from age 0 to age 1 and will then recruit into the fishery. So next year, it's estimated that there will be over 100 million walleye age 2 and older in Lake Erie. So there were a lot of problems in the 70s for sure. The fishery all the way down from Saginaw Bay down to Lake Erie was closed for 2 years due to mercury concerns in the 70s as well, and that there's still fish consumption advisories, but that is much better than it was, and so
So today it's safe to eat the fish.
There are still consumption advisories, and those are available through the Department of Health and Human Services that do the Eat Safe Fish guides, and those are updated annually. But yes, safe to consume. A certain amount of walleye each year, and the fishing is. They used to call the 80s the good old days, and now we're saying the good old days are back.
The good old days are back.
Because you can almost walk on walleye out there.
Is there a certain point? You're telling me that there's going to be potentially over 100 million will be the population in Lake Erie. Is there a certain point where it's considered an overpopulation?
There are some some people who have concerns that maybe because there are so many walleye that, they're eating, say, perch, which is another really popular sport fish. And certainly they do. They're a top predator, so yes, they're going to eat other fish. But we haven't seen a dramatic increase in the number of yellow perch in walleye stomachs. And really what you get concerned about overpopulation is when the condition of the fish starts to deteriorate. So if you start to see really skinny, sickly looking walleye, and as you can see from the photos, we're not seeing that at all. We're seeing really healthy, good growth rates on these walleye, and the cycle goes up and down through the years, and walleye and yellow perch and all those other species have coexisted in the lake for thousands of years. So in that instance, if we did ever get to the point where the condition started to decline, then we might increase, the bag limits or things like that. But I don't think we'd ever get in that situation, at least based on what we're seeing now. So.
Interesting. Bob, I got to ask you, as our Detroit River keeper, which is a tastier fish, yellow perch or the walleye? What would you suggest?
Well, they're both very good. Some people are specific to walleye, and others like perch. I like them both, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay, good.
You
Sounds
can't
great.
go wrong with either one.
That's right.
Yeah, they're both good. Mackenzie, I want to bring you into the conversation. I'm not going to leave you alone. I got to pick on all of you. So, so the next question I think will probably be kind of a tag team, maybe between you and Sarah. But it is what improvements and success stories have you seen in the aquatic community and game fish population in the Detroit River?
Yeah, definitely. I think Bob touched on a few of our habitat projects with Friends of the Detroit River earlier. A lot of those have been created specifically for protecting backwater areas, so there's more habitat available for fish spawning and nesting. That follows through the whole entire food web, which ultimately brings more fish and wildlife to these areas, and so making our impacts even greater. One I think that he didn't mention was Hennepin Marsh, which is also at the lower part of the Detroit River, not as far down as Sugar Island, but still around the Groseal area. And that's another project that has been working on and having pre-design and hydrology assessments done to really see what type of capabilities can be done with that type of area.
To give our viewers and listeners kind of a visual image, so Hennepin Marsh, it's actually on Groseal, correct? Can you kind of locate that for us visually?
Yeah, it's actually right by the toll bridge.
Oh, it's by the toll bridge. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So it's northern Groseal.
Yes, yep, and it's completely, in the water. It is the marsh itself. It's not like some of our other projects where, we're focused around an island. So this one has a unique perspective of kind of the actual in-water aquatic habitat, whereas the others we're really protecting existing environments and making them a more robust area for that spawning.
Okay, very interesting. Sarah, did you want to add anything to that?
Sure. So we talked a little bit about pollution at the beginning, and I think another thing that most people don't realize happened in the Detroit River way back then was that they dynamited out a ton of natural habitat from the Detroit River when they were creating the shipping channels. And so the native fish species lost a lot of their really valuable spawning habitats, which is now deeper water. And so that's where a lot of these projects come into play, is that we're trying to return some of that natural spawning conditions. And so we have the 5 sturgeon spawning reefs that have been constructed in the Detroit River and all these other habitat projects. And so while one of the main focuses was for lake sturgeon, we're finding a lot of other native species such as lake whitefish, walleye, and other species using those reefs as well. So just the entire fish community as a whole is really coming back really strong, and that we're seeing the numbers of lake sturgeon that we are, because they are a species that really needs good water quality. So definitely, good signs for the Detroit River.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. That process that you just mentioned and described with, basically putting dynamite on the floor of the Detroit River and blowing it up to create those shipping channels. Do you know I wonder how many people know that occurred. Do you know when that potential or approximately when that was taking place?
I can give you a
Bob,
little history on that. Yeah, the Livingston Channel was one of the first channels that were dug in the Lower Detroit River, and the project started around 1904.
Oh, wow.
And they finally completed the last part of the Livingston Channel around the 1940s. And they drilled and blasted tens of thousands, millions of tons of stone out of that.
Wow.
And the bottom had an undulated bottom on it, and that's where the fish spawned, the sturgeon and the walleye. And when they blasted out the channels, they're basically flat bottom now. So we lost all that habitat.
Oh, yeah.
So these reefs, fishing reefs I mentioned earlier, and that Sarah talked about, were installed in various parts of the river to help try to recreate some of that. And then a lot of the work that we're doing with these shoals, we're using that same limestone type material, and that's creating a lot of in-water habitat and aquatic habitat. We actually have examples of indicator, we call certain species in the river indicator species, the ones that were kind of, populations have dropped due to all the impacts over the years, and we're looking at those to see how well the environment is coming back. And eagles are certainly one we're looking at is in the bird category, but sturgeon and other populations. But we have what are called mud puppy, which is an aquatic salamander, a large aquatic amphibian. And they really need or benefited from having a rocky bottom, because that's where they like to live, and that's where they like to. As we've been building these shoals in various parts of the river, we've had folks from the Detroit Zoo that have been monitoring for the mud puppies, whose populations have dramatically been dropping over the years. They found that in the areas around where we're building these shoals, the populations, there's a huge number of these mud puppies that are now utilizing these areas. So that's just one example of many where the habitat restoration work we're doing is not only helping benefit fisheries, but all kinds of other of the river's animals as well.
Yeah, it's remarkable. When you touch one part of your ecosystem, it impacts the entire ecosystem and every species that's that resides in that area. But thanks, Bob, for describing that, because it's a process that started in 1904 and concluded in the 40s. Most people alive today probably are not even aware of that, and that would have been very interesting to witness that. The dynamite exploding in the water. I wonder what that looked like. It was,
if you can
and how that
Google
impacted
some of
the region.
the images, they're pretty astounding.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I'll have to look that up.
There's some good photographs of what they did was when they were building the upper part of the Livingston Channel around Stony, they actually started putting in the shoals on either side, and then they blocked off the upper and lower part of the channel, and they came back to dig it a little deeper. You can actually see the steam equipment down there, and you can just see the bottom, how flat it is where they blasted it out. So it really changed the topography of the bottom of the river. And the channels were not only down in the lower river in the Livingston, but we've got over 60 miles of channels that go all the way up to the upper end up towards St. Clair. So so the main areas of the channels where the steamships could come down and pass through the river.
So in thinking about where Grosse Ile is, with Grosse Ile being such a large island, I know today most of our freighters go along the east side of Grosse Ile. That's where the shipping channel is. So back then, were they coming on both sides of Grosse Ile? Do you know, or was the shipping channel created on both sides of the island?
Initially, it was created out in the Livingston Channel, but then they blasted the channel all the way down past the Grosse Ile Toll Bridge, past the county bridge, and then there's a turning basin in front of the Detroit Edison Power Plant. So that whole area from there all the way up to the north end of Grosse Ile where the channels combine has all been blasted out.
And where that turn basin is, speaking of walleye, that, from what I understand, that's one of the most popular spots for walleye fishing.
Well, just below the turning basin, in the area of the river which is still natural, you still have that undulated bottom. Plus, you've also got some impacts from the power plant that provides warmer water there that kind of gets the fish moving earlier in the year. But that is one of the reasons why that lower area there below the Grosse Ile County Bridge and below the turning basin is such a good fishing area, because it still has that natural rocky substrate that we had all through the river at one time.
Yeah, that's great. Very interesting. So that's a great segue into our next question, and I think this is probably going to be good for both Sarah and Bob again. But it says the question is, the Downriver region of the country has been referred to as the best walleye fishing spot anywhere in the world, and I think you can argue that with a very solid argument. That certainly didn't happen by accident, but by design, correct? Sarah or Bob, you want to take that on?
Yeah, I would say a little bit of both, right?
Yeah.
Mother Nature definitely
Play a role?
has a big role in that. But yeah, no, just getting the word out and the accessibility. So the amount of shore fishing access, a lot of the industry has been removed. We have basically in the entire Detroit Riverwalk area that people can now shore fish from. There certainly is a lot of effort. So the last creel survey that we did in 2015 on the Detroit River, we estimated almost 500,000 angler hours of effort through the entire open water fishing season. This year, with the walleye numbers that we have, I would expect that to be even higher. If you try to launch your boat at any of the boat ramps right now during peak fishing season,
it's a little bit difficult,
there's a wait. So there always could be more access, certainly. But yeah, like you mentioned, it draws in people from all over the Midwest and whatnot, because you can get out there, get on your boat, catch a limit in a really short amount of time, and go back and do it the next day.
Well, that brings up another really good point, and the fact that all these people are coming in to the Downriver region right now to take advantage of this amazing walleye fishing season. And you think about me as the president of our regional chamber of commerce, I always think about the economic impact of anything. And so Mackenzie, as a stewardship director, I don't know if that's something that you look at from time to time, but do you ever think of, or do you ever look into what the economic impact is for our region when we draw in these kinds of crowds for the great sport fishing that we have?
Yeah, I know just in general, our Great Lakes fisheries on an annual basis can range between $4 and $8 billion for not just residential but commercial use and all of that. It's an astounding number. I can't say I would know for our specific area in particular, but having that much momentum coming into our area is also another great opportunity to educate fishermen about clean, drain, dry, and making sure that they're not bringing any unwanted aquatic hitchhikers with them into our areas, and conversely bringing them back with them to wherever they may call home.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm glad you mentioned that, Mackenzie, and I think we'll talk more about stewardship and kind of your area of expertise here in a moment. But Sarah, you also brought up another really good point, the fact that there's such a maybe a traffic jam, for lack of a better term, right now with all the boats, and so you don't have to own a boat to take advantage of the amazing fishing opportunities we have in the Downriver region. So fishing piers throughout Downriver are abundant. And how much has accessibility to our rivers influenced the health of the waterways and resurgence of the various fish species?
So I think the closer that people can get to a waterway, right, the more connection and sort of develop a relationship with it, and they're going to care, more about it and how that can grow. And Bob is on the river, almost every day.
Now Bob's on a boat. And by the way, Bob, I love your Facebook image, because I think it's not the Saginaw, but I'm trying to think of what freighter is right behind you from the Lower Lakes Towing Company. It's just an amazing photo, by the way. I love it. Just have to make a side remark.
Yeah. So Bob, when he's up and down, I'm sure he's seen, all the people fishing from shore, and so I'll let him speak to maybe some hot spots and.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I spend a lot of time on the river all year round, but particularly in the springtime. We just had our Friends of Detroit River cleanup this last Saturday, and you're exactly right about backups at boat ramps, because I was there launching the cleanup boat cruise to get out on the water, and people were coming in and wondering if they could put in at the park that we were at, and because they were saying all the other boat ramps are full, and again, as far as fishing, there is access certainly by boat, but there's plenty of opportunity along the river, as Sarah mentioned, and we've had a number of new facilities that have been opened up along the Detroit River, all the way from up in Belle Isle, all the way on down, but particularly with the areas like the Refuge. They've got the new fishing pier in, and that was kind of designed so that it comes far enough out that it's right out in that area where I was talking about earlier in the lower Trenton Channel, where where the walleye are at and are spawning in the area, you can catch walleye off that pier. So they've been doing very well off of that pier. And,
it goes. I mean, I don't know if you know the exact feet. It goes out into the Detroit River, but it's a significant.
Yeah, and it was designed that way to get it out into that area where you're out into the deeper water where the fish are at. So they've done very well there. So
that's great.
Yeah, right now every year we seem to get more and more. But as Sarah said, the more fish that are out there, the more people that want to come out and fish. And again, it was amazing last weekend. You could literally walk on boats to go from Grosse Seal to the mainland in the lower Trenton Channel. There were that many boats out there.
Right.
And,
so if the bridge ever goes down again, maybe we can just wait for walleye fishing season to get across.
But again, when you've got the numbers we do, and as you're asking if the area was created artificial, but you're funneling all these fish that are coming out of Lake Erie to come up and spawn, and they're coming into a fairly narrow channel through either side of Grosse Seal there. And you've got a lot of fish in a little area, and it makes for a great opportunity in the spring for fishing. Yeah. Not only for walleye, but we have other species that are great sports fishing, like silver bass. A lot of people catch those. People catch those off the shoreline, but they're fun to catch on light tackle out in the river as well. So between that and our perch and all the others, we really have a tremendous fishery, and the numbers, Sarah can back that up, but the numbers are showing pretty good population, super population for walleye and good population for perch. So we're really fortunate that we're in a time period where there's a lot of fish in the river, and makes for great fishing and sporting opportunities for recreational fishermen.
Just a moment ago, you mentioned that I think it was this past Saturday there was a cleanup effort with the Friends of the Detroit River. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are probably listening and they want to be involved in those kinds of initiatives. So Mackenzie and Bob, how could somebody get involved with the Friends of the Detroit River?
I'm going to pass that to Mackenzie because she was.
That's her area.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. We're always looking for areas to clean up and for volunteers to come join us. We had a great turnout at last weekend's Earth Day cleanup event. I actually led a group at the Detroit River International Wildlife Refuge, and I had exact eyes on the situation you guys were talking about. The fishing pier was loaded and hundreds of boats out there. But we are hoping to do more of those types of events, and you can always follow us on our website at friendsofthedetroitriver.org, and we can reach us at river@detroitriver.org for our email. We will accept different locations for cleanups, and we have all the tools necessary to go out and perform them. We actually collected over 1,500 pounds last weekend with all of our volunteers, and it's really just nice to be able to have everybody out there and get that kind of work done. We not only do them from the shores, but as Bob mentioned, we take people out on the boats, and we actually are planning to do some kayak cleanups this year. So if anybody's interested, if you like paddling and kind of do your part in both ways, enjoy the water recreationally, and then also do your part to help clean it up.
That sounds like a blast. And you can find out more about that at the website?
Yep, on our website, or you can contact us directly at the email,
and I will mention too, because I have to, it's not a shameless plug, but you can find the Friends of Detroit River at the Southern Wayne County Regional Chamber's website, because they're amazing chamber members as well. So, swcrc.com, and I'm sure you guys are probably on Facebook and a lot of the major social media channels. Very good. So here's a follow-up question for you, Mackenzie. Reversing decades of pollution doesn't just happen, and I'm sure you know that from a lot of your efforts cleaning up the river. And the Detroit River is obviously a crucial strait in the Great Lakes ecosystem, as we've been talking about. It's both an important trade route and source of our drinking water in southeast Michigan. Just how important is the health of the Detroit River to our region?
Well, it's very important.
It's a loaded question.
Yeah, not only for our exactly. But it's very important not only for our fish and wildlife, but also for the residents that live around here. I mean, we also rely on clean water, and it is all one entity. The same water that's being rained on your roof and taking down your stormwater drain is being flushed into these systems, and clean water really has many different aspects. The type of work that DNR and Friends of the Detroit River do is just one type of aspect of that, and I really think that people can really connect personally to this by integrating different aspects of rain gardens and reducing impervious surfaces around their homes and in their own landscapes.
Yeah, and we were just a moment ago, we were talking about some of the things that we saw in the river in Lake Erie in the 70s and moving through the 80s. But I mean, truly, and I think the reputation of the Detroit River and Lake Erie has changed dramatically over the past couple of years. People want to come down here and visit Lake Erie Metro Park and go out on a boat and do walleye fishing. And when you look at the Detroit River, it's a beautiful blue color now. It's gorgeous. How has the perception changed, Bob?
Yeah, I think I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about how we got here and what led to that.
Absolutely.
We talked about there's a lot of anniversaries this year, but we're celebrating the anniversary of Earth Day. But we're also celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Clean Water Act and the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement between the United States and Canada. The Clean Water Act really was the legislation enacted and signed by Richard Nixon in '72 that really started putting some regulations on discharges from industrial sources as well as municipal sources, and those were really some of the real impacts to the Detroit River. And once those were enacted, we started to make a lot of progress in cleaning up the river. The Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement also was the one that enacted the area of concerns, which Detroit is one, and that's what we've been working on, and that's what's been providing the funding for all the habitat restoration work and a lot of sediment remediation that we're going to be doing too. That's another aspect of things that are going to help clean up the river even better than it is. So it's amazing, where we came from at the turn of the century and where we are today. It's been a long road, but there's still more to do. But as you say, if you go out there and see the populations of fish, the people that are able to recreate and swim in the summertime, the economic value it's bringing to the Detroit River, it's amazing. It's night and day from what it was 50, 60 years ago.
It truly is, and I'm glad you brought those points up, Bob, because there's been a lot of effort put into changing and improving the quality of the river and of northern Lake Erie where we live here. And I just want to say kudos to the three of you. You guys, you just done a phenomenal job, and I don't know where we would be as a region without the efforts of your organization, so thank you so much. And I want to talk a little bit, as you know, today's podcast is about downriver fishing, so I want to talk about some of the great fishing spots that you can find in the downriver region. And I'm going to answer my earlier question about how far the Detroit River, drawing a blank, not platform, but help me out here. Fishing pier, thank you. How far that extends into the Detroit River, and I have the answer right in front of me. So I want to talk a little bit about the new Refuge Gateway at the Detroit River International Refuge, which is located in Trenton. Now, this site offers a very compelling shore fishing experience with a fishing pier, and here it is, that extends 775 feet into the Detroit River, and is one of the premier shore fishing facilities in all of the Great Lakes. Now, that's amazing to think that's located right here in the Downriver region in the city of Trenton. It is free, which is even better, universally accessible to all people, including those with disabilities. That's extremely important. And it's open 7 days a week during daylight hours. So, Bob, I'm going to ask you maybe a follow-up question, and actually all three of you can chime in on this. What are some of the great places to fish along the Detroit River?
Well, I think you mentioned that. Certainly, like I say, the Refuge Fishing Pier being, the location is right in the heart of...
It's like the premier spot.
The premier spot, and it was well designed to put it there. But we have fit, pretty much all up and down the Detroit River. For walleye, you can catch walleye all the way up above Detroit there around Pesh Island, where the mouth of Lake St. Clair meets the Detroit River. Anywhere we have gravelly spawning areas, you can do that. Around through the Trenton Channel, around the other side of Grosse Ile there by Stony Island, between Grosse Ile and Stony Island, down in the south area around Sugar Island on the east side of the island. There's a cutback there that is good for walleye. Perch pretty much all around the Detroit River, anywhere around the weed beds and things, and around the islands. We've got great perch fisheries. Again, there's certainly plenty of fisheries out into the Lake Erie and farther down towards Toledo in that area.
Yeah, and I think about some of the our riverfront downriver communities like the city of Refuge. You have Mariners Memorial Lighthouse right there at Bellinger Park. And E-Course, Dingle Park, and of course, Wyandotte at Bishop Park, and going all the way back down to Trenton at Elizabeth Park. And there's a lot of great spots where people can fish where they don't need a boat, and you can take advantage of the great, fishing opportunities we have in the region. And I actually have in front of me a list of 15 spots that, are considered maybe some of the best places downriver to fish, like Hurock Park and Flat Rock, which is along the Huron River, so not the Detroit River, but the Huron River is also another great spot to do some excellent fishing as well. And actually on the screen here, we have the listing of 15 spots, and I'll just kind of point out maybe a couple of those. I mentioned Elizabeth Park in Trenton, Hull's Trace in Brownstown Township, which is right, kind of like at the very southern part of downriver, right before you enter Monroe County. Lake Erie Metro Park in Brownstown Township, Lower Huron Metro Park. I mentioned Ballinger Park in River Rouge, right at the lighthouse. Detroit River International Wildlife Refuge, of course, and there's so many other great places. So I want to encourage all the listeners. Of course, you can't see what's on our screen here, but if you're watching us visually, you can see these amazing 15 places in the Downriver region, and I know there's so many more as well. But we're going to kind of switch topics here, and as we wrap things up, I want to focus a little bit about the different fish species that you can find in the Detroit River and northern Lake Huron, and even the Huron River as well. And I know we have a great graphic that we're going to put up. Actually, we just put up on the screen rather, that shows visually some of those species. And you can see there's some pretty large fish on there, but there's also some great mid-sized and smaller fish as well. So a good question probably for all of you. So feel free to chime in, because I know you're all very passionate about our fish species that we have. What are some of the top species anglers can hope to catch in our area?
Yeah, so I think in this region we are blessed beyond belief with the fish diversity that we have. So from the St. Clair River down to Lake Erie, a lot of water bodies are known for being, the Bass Lake or the Walleye Lake, but although walleye probably gets the most, spotlight, the diversity of fish that you have a really, really good chance of catching is just astounding. And big, fish. So muskellunge fishing in the Detroit River and Lake St. Clair is excellent, world class, I would say. As Bob mentioned, perch. Really good bass fishing, lake sturgeon, so one of the only areas in the Great Lakes that has a fishery for lake sturgeon, and that is becoming a lot more popular, particularly on the St. Clair River. Just a really unique opportunity. Most of that fishing is catch and release. Same thing that we're seeing now with bass. A lot more people are practicing catch and release fishing, so just the pure enjoyment of getting out there and having a great day on the lake. Freshwater drum is something that people are going to catch a lot. The silver bass, the run has been a little bit smaller the last few years, but during years of really big runs, you'll just see people literally, like Bob and I, next to each other, whole line, fishing to get the bass. So
that's amazing. And you mentioned lake sturgeon. I think I had mentioned this earlier in the podcast, that there was a record. There was, how would you word it? Probably one of the largest lake sturgeon that has ever been caught, right on the Detroit River or Lake Erie. Am I remembering that correctly, Rich? And does anybody know how large that lake sturgeon was by any chance?
Oh, gosh.
That was in the news?
It was over 6 feet, I believe.
220 pounds.
Yeah. So lake sturgeon are very long lived, so they can live to be over 100 years old, particularly the females. So that's why they are really, one of those that you really have to have the habitat and the water quality because they're not even going to spawn until they're 20 years or older.
Oh my
so
gosh.
we've come a long way that we're able to have sturgeon that big in the system.
Yeah, that are that big and potentially over 100 years old. I mean, that's absolutely remarkable. And I was, again, on your screen is a picture of the different fish species, and I'm just going to kind of mention real quick what you're seeing, what you're looking at on your screen. As Sarah had mentioned, a lot of these, the silver bass, largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, the rock bass, yellow perch, white perch, bluegill, the crappie, am I pronouncing that correctly? Crappie. Northern pike, muskellunge, walleye, the brown bullhead, carp, and channel fish. Which one is the brown bullhead? Can somebody describe that to me? I don't recall exactly what that is.
Small catfish type looking.
Okay, a small catfish type. Okay, gotcha. Is it actually brown?
Yeah. Kind of brown and green, depending on the color.
Very good. So walleye fishing on the Michigan side of the lower Detroit River, which the area we know as Downriver today, brings in more than $1 million to local communities each spring. So going back to my earlier question about the economic impact. So good question again, probably for all of you guys, is how does a healthy river impact the economic environment? And again, as a chamber president, this is something that's near and dear to my heart, serving our local business community. But how does local fishing impact our small businesses and maybe even our nonprofits as well?
Do you want me to?
You want to take that on, Bob?
You hit on it last time. I'll
Yeah,
yeah.
Well, again, and I kind of go back to the history of the river, and I keep referring back to the earlier years when things weren't as nice out on the river.
Yeah.
And, you think of the heavy industry along the shoreline, as Sarah mentioned, there's oil spills. It wasn't conducive for recreational activity. People didn't really have a connection to the river if it wasn't for work and related. There wasn't a lot of recreation due to accessibility and just the quality of the water. So now that things have cleaned up, it's bringing a lot to the area as far as economic value. You look at the amount of money that comes in from the tournaments we have and just the general fishing population that's in the river during the springtime. It's millions of dollars that come into the hotels, to the restaurants, to the fish shops. Just generally bringing that in.
Yep.
But the abilities now with the cleaner water and the accessibility to be able to put a boat in, you can go out and you can swim. You can go to some of the islands that are held under the public trust through either the state or through the federal government, and you can anchor and spend a day out there. You can fish, you can bird watch, you can kayak. I mean, it's just so many things you can do now that really, wasn't conducive years ago. And again, accessibility. And I guess maybe Mackenzie might want to talk about stewardship and bringing people close to the river. They understand the value of it and get a sense of the stewardship aspect of it. I think that's an important point.
Yeah, exactly. We really try to make these these areas, these natural areas, accessible to the public because really to care about something and to value it, you have to know it, you have to experience it and be a part of it. And so bringing in that momentum is a really big aspect of stewardship. And then obviously educating on best management practices and keeping it the way that we've so hardly restored, taken lots of years and resources to restore, and we want to hopefully keep it that way for future generations. So once kind of the funding has trickled down, we really are relying on our local residents to kind of pick that up and be the stewards of the land so it doesn't revert back into any stages that we previously had.
Yeah, do you see, we obviously get a lot of people that will come out of town this time of the year, and I do see a lot of fishing boats at, in hotel parking lots throughout Southgate and, other communities, Woodhaven and others. Do you find that a lot of the people that do come in from out of town are very respectful to our local environment, and they take good care of the river when they're here visiting?
Yeah, I would say for the most part we do see that, and where we don't, we just try to educate and that's really where we stand with that, is just trying to make sure that we're all on the same page, and if they're coming here to fish, they obviously are, they enjoy that and respect it, and we just ask that they keep it keep that way for future generations.
Yeah, and it truly is, a major economic impact. And like I mentioned just a moment ago, I do see a lot of fishing boats and, trucks and things like that come and will be staying at local hotels, and that's obviously bringing money into the local economy, but also visiting local restaurants and small business retail shops, and that has a huge impact on the entire Downriver community, and it helps to employ our region's workforce. And keeps our businesses healthy. And it's such an important part of this whole conversation today is that economic impact. So before we wrap up today's podcast, I do want to ask the three of you, I want to give you the opportunity, is there anything else that you might want to say that you feel is an important part of this conversation?
I'd like to talk a little bit more about we were talking about different fish species and the resurgence of some of them. Some of the work, a lot of planning and design went into each of the habitat restoration projects we did. And again, the benefit is trying to create additional population and habitat for them. I think another one, I talked about the mud puppy earlier, but I think another good example is small and largemouth bass.
Yeah.
A lot of the work that we've done with these large reefs and shoals that we're building and protected areas of the river, trying to break the current, we created areas that what we call warm water or shallow nesting fish that make nests like bass and crappies and some areas to where they can spawn and have a nursery area. It's having a tremendous impact on the number of fish and populations. When I was a kid in the 70s, we hardly ever caught any bass in the river. There wasn't that many smallmouth and certainly largemouth bass.
Yeah.
Now they're a dominant species, and I think the cleaner water, better habitat, and some of the structural things that we're doing to try to create more habitat for them are really benefiting. And like you say, it's not just the fish. I mean, everything that we do has a impact on other species, from birds to animals to aquatics to everything that utilizes the area. So
That's great. Good point, Bob. I think when I was a kid, I remember it seemed like every fish that I caught was a bluegill, and that was to me, that was the worst because they have these spine or these what would you call it on the top?
Gills,
these gills, and you have to take your hand a certain way so you don't get poked by it. And I hated catching bluegill, and it seemed like every time I caught a bluegill. But it's good to hear that we actually have a good amount of bass and walleye now, and as a matter of fact, almost over 100 million now. Maybe next year projected population. So with the walleye, so I think this was a great conversation. I really appreciate the three of you joining us today on the Destination Downriver podcast, and thank you so much. Mackenzie, Sarah, and Bob, you guys are tremendous leaders in our region, and greatly appreciate your ongoing efforts to protect our ecosystem.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank
we're
you.
happy to be here.
Absolutely. And again, my name is Ron Henricks. I've been your host today. I want to just kind of wrap things up by saying this is a very, very important topic, and the fact is that supporting our local Detroit River community and, of course, Northern Lake Erie really does have a major impact on our entire community. And it does have an economic impact for the chamber members, the small business community, and nonprofits that are out there watching this today. I want to encourage you to support the Friends of the Detroit River, of course, the work of the DNR and others who are just having a tremendous impact on our entire community. But I also want to take a moment to thank our good friend Greg Kowalski, today's sponsor, of course, at Allegra Print and Marketing in the beautiful city riverfront community of Wyandotte. And I want to thank you, the listener, for listening. And thank you to our esteemed panel members, of course, again. And please visit the Destination Downriver website, destinationdownriver.com, and our Facebook page to find out about next month's podcast, where we'll be talking about the abundant network of trails and waterways to get outside and enjoy the warm spring weather that will undoubtedly return. It will, even though it's a little bit cold right now, we know that weather is coming. So thank you again to our sponsor, once again, Allegra Print and Marketing in Wyandotte, Mr. Greg Kowalski. You're greatly appreciated, where your marketing success can start happening today. And I want to say a special thank you to the City of Taylor Media Center. Carl Zymak and all of our great friends here at the Media Center have been absolutely phenomenal to work with and really have taken this podcast to the next level. So thank you again. And we will see you on next month's Destination Downriver podcast. Have a great day.